wintertime, but we're heating things up when it comes to talking about social media and schools. You're back for another lovely episode, and I'm really excited for you to meet Stephanie Smith. She's out of Fort Osage in Missouri. We're going to chat all about her long history with the school district. 18 years she's been there. Her job has actually morphed and transitioned, and she helped convince the school that they should be on social media. You're going to really learn how she manages social media as a one person shop with 5,000 students and a lot of social media channels out there. They really promote their staff members, their teachers, celebrating what's happening. And she's going to dive into kind of how she does that, how she kind of controls it. She did have a mug today. If you're watching um, on YouTube, chaos coordinator was her mug. And sometimes being a one person shop, I'm sure she definitely feels like the chaos coordinator, but she has a lot of systems in place. So I'm excited for you to learn from that. She really talks about how she um, encourages staff, new staff, existing staff to tell the story. She talks about her best ways to get content, and she's got a really great strategy of setting aside some time each week to look at the social media channels out there. And then we're going to talk about, some of the best stories that she's been able to tell, and also lean into what her state school public relations chapter has meant to her, MOSPRA, which because she's in Missouri. But Stephanie is also very active in the national chapter, and we're going to be talking about what that means to her. Networking is key. You're never alone, even in a one person shop. So I'm so excited for you to meet her. Now, if you are interested in meeting up with thousands of folks from across the country in that are in school communications, make sure to check out the NSPRA seminar. We're going to talk about that. Both Stephanie and I are speaking there this summer. It's in July, and it's in Chicago this year. And so I just want to invite you to check that out at nspra.org. It's under the seminar tab. I'm not sure if registration is open quite yet, but it probably should be. And so join me there. I'll be there along with several of my team members from Social School for EDU, learning, sharing, networking. It's going to be awesome. So, without any further delay, let's get into our interview today with Stephanie Smith. All right, today's K 12 PR tip is a simple tip to get some more content from your staff. I'm sure they are feeling the burn and the burnout maybe of this school year, and it's been challenging. And so, getting content from them might be challenging. Stephanie actually talks about this in our interview today, that she had a social media theme this year of just getting classroom lessons out on social media, sharing those little lessons, not the big projects, not the big events, but the little classroom lessons out on social media. So maybe it's a little math, lesson where students are learning how to multiply. Maybe it's a poetry lesson where kids are reading some poetry aloud, or writing their own. Maybe it's a lesson in, the high school foreign language class, and you're sharing a little lesson out about that. Getting those small little stories, they happen every day. We need to shine a light on those, and those could be a great invitation to get more content for your social media pages. Definitely check out the stories that Stephanie is sharing on Fort Osage. We always share all the social media channels for our guests, so you can check out the stories that they've been sharing. But my challenge and my kind of tip for you this week is, don't neglect those small little things, and ask for them and see what you get. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. So now let's get to today's interview with Stephanie Smith. Hey, Stephanie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is great to be. It's a little bit chilly up here. I'm not sure what the weather is like in Missouri. How is it?
It is really cold today with a low wind chill. So it's a stay inside kind of day.
Yeah, well, that's good. It's a good day to get things done and record a podcast. So, I am really excited to introduce you to all of our listeners. Why don't you just share your background and your role as the director of public relations at Fort Osage?
Yeah, so I have been with Fort Osage for 18 years. I am the Director of Public Relations, which is a great title, but it's a one person department. So it doesn't fully encompass everything I do, but I am blessed to work with a great team of colleagues at our central office and on our administrative team that, the whole time I've been here have just been super supportive of what we're trying to do with communication.
So Fort Osage, I already mispronounced it, so I'm sorry. Have you, so 18 years there, have you been the director of public relations that whole time?
I have. I started here pretty quick right out of college. I wasn't really sure what a school communication person did, but I had a degree in communications with a focus in public relations. And I half joke in my interview, they talked to me about photography skills because this was way before digital cameras. And I said, I usually cut people's heads off, but I'm really willing to learn. And they still hired me. So they must have seen something. But I love what I do. I love the community that I work in. I can't imagine doing anything else.
So tell me a little bit about the size of your district. You said you're a one person shop. And then like how many schools, how many students?
So we have 5,000 students in 11 schools. We're a one high school district, which in Missouri makes a difference, at least. So we have five elementaries, an upper elementary, middle school, high school. We are blessed to have the Career and Technology Center for our area. And so it's a joy to work with them. And then we offer an early childhood program as well as an alternative school for our high school students.
Oh, wow. So you have a lot of offerings. With all of the thing, well, first of all, I'm assuming, are you on like cabinet?
I am on the administrative cabinet and I actually report directly to the superintendent.
Okay, which is awesome. And has it been that way since you got started?
It was not that way when I started. It was about 2 years into this position. I was reporting to an assistant superintendent, and we made the case that that didn't make sense. But I've always been on the administrative cabinet and had a leadership role with our administrative team.
Okay. Yeah, it's so critical for you to be at the table so you can kind of anticipate things that are coming down the way, and really effectively do your role there. So of course this podcast is called Mastering Social Media for Schools. So I know you do a lot more than just social media, but how does social media fit into your role as the director of public relations?
So, when I started, social media wasn't a thing. And then it kind of came on the scene, and everybody was sort of unsure of what it was going to mean for schools, what it was going to mean for communication. I actually had to fight to get our first Facebook page. Took me almost 2 years to convince the superintendent and our administrative team that it was going to be an okay thing, that it really was going to be a positive. And so at Fort Osage, our whole premise from the day we started was that social media would be a way to tell our story and to share all the great things that are happening in our schools. And for the most part, we've stuck pretty true to that throughout the entire time that we've run things. We've expanded, obviously. We started with Facebook. We're now on Twitter, Instagram, as well as some Pinterest. I have not delved into Snapchat or TikTok. Um, those two platforms still tend to cause us issues in our district, and we feel like if we're on those platforms, that we're encouraging kids and parents to be there with us. So we have not gone that route yet. But for us, social media is just a way to show you all the great things that are happening in our schools.
Yeah. And do you run the district-wide channels then? Is that what you do for the Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook?
I do run all the district wide. On our Facebook, I'm also an administrator on any page that we have that has the Fort Osage name on it.
Okay.
I don't usually touch those other than monitoring systems, but there are some times when teachers leave or are having problems, and that becomes very helpful to be able to jump on there and just get in the back end and help them work through their issue. And then on the Twitter, I'm not. We don't collect those passwords from our staff. We have an agreement in place that if I ask for that password, that you would provide it.
Okay. And so we've got some individuals, I'm sure, that have Twitter accounts. Do like your separate schools, do they have their own social media accounts?
So all of my schools have some type of social media account for the school.
Okay.
Um, they all have Facebook pages, with the exception of our high school. And our high school is exclusively on Twitter.
Okay. And then somebody from the school or a group of people are in charge of those pages?
They are. So we have an agreement that has to be signed if you want to have a social media channel that has the Fort Osage name or is going to share out any kind of Fort Osage information. And so that requires an administrative signature. Typically, that's going to be the building principal or director. And then it also requires a signed contract by the employee who's going to manage it. And then once those two pieces have taken place, it comes to me for my approval. I have to double check the handle that you want to use, any hashtags that you want associated with that account. And then once we sign off on that, uh, your site can go live.
Do you have a social media directory on your website for your different accounts?
So we don't have a directory on our website. It is something that is on our wish list to get done. We do have that in our mobile app, as well as each school has a social media directory for the school.
Okay.
So if you were to walk into our middle school, it's part of the information that's readily available there to parents, that would let you know how you can connect with different teams, teachers, activities, and the school as a whole.
Okay. And I have a social media directory blog that I'll just reference in the show notes. But it just sounds like you have kind of a pretty rigorous, I mean, process. I'm sure that it took a few maybe years to develop. Is that true?
It totally took a few years to really get there, and stealing and borrowing ideas from so many colleagues. It was actually your social media directory that post or story that we saw that has actually been just sitting on our wish list for that. But it did. It took quite a while to really figure out how is going to be best to manage it for our district and being a one person office. We have a yearly review process where basically I just check in with everybody that has social media channels. We make sure that they're still using them, that it's going okay, that they're going to continue to use it moving forward in the next school year. And that didn't come about till really about 4 or 5 years ago, when we found that, once you got things up and going and it was running well, there was really no check in process. And so, as teachers might retire or leave us, sometimes their pages were still there with old content. They weren't being updated. New teachers are super excited to get started, and I love working with them every July. But sometimes they get started with something on social media and then they find that it's either not working for them or it's something they can't maintain. And so then again, you just kind of have this old account sitting there. And so, as we really brought forward making everything accessible to all, this was a great way to really put in process a place that would help us review those accounts every year.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great idea. And that is one thing that I mentioned in that social media directory blog was just that there's a whole process, and then at the end it's like there's got to be a check-in because sometimes you're right. They're so excited to get started and then it just wanes off or people leave or all of the things. And so that's great. And I know there's a lot of people listening that are I've read in our Facebook page, the school comms group, people just get started in a new PR role with a school and then they'll be like, I'm going to tackle this. And it's like, just so you know, it's going to take you a couple years. Like it's nothing that can snap your finger. But I'm sure you feel really good about where you are now.
I really do feel pretty good about where we're at. And it's been fun to work with the schools over the years, especially my elementaries. Sometimes the elementary teachers were finding that it was really hard to always find the time and the content. And so, what one of the tricks that we have used here as a smaller school district is to have grade level Facebook pages. So there's 4 or 5 teachers that are managing it, posting it, sharing on it, and that really helped because, sometimes when you're in a smaller community or maybe even a larger community, it's hard when one teacher has a Facebook page and then the classroom next door doesn't. And those parents sometimes feel a little left out or that they're missing some of the fun that's taking place in the classroom every day. And so it's been great to really sit down and work with teachers to find a way to really make social media something that is doable, doesn't take too much time, and really reaches their intended audience.
Yeah. Well, what I love, what I'm hearing so far, Stephanie, is how much you and your school district really promote telling your story. And that sometimes people are like, no, no, you can't, you can't have your own page because we're scared of what you're going to put out there. So what ways do you train and support and encourage that with your staff? I mean, how have you kind of fostered that mentality throughout and that kind of storytelling culture throughout your district?
So it really starts with our new teachers. I'm blessed on the very first day that they spend with us to get an hour of time to just talk about social media. Um, and I find that over the years, when I've started with those new teachers, they're eager, they're excited, they bring new ideas to the building, and it just helps kind of foster that. At least once a year, on a district level, I am allotted some PD time to also run some social media sessions to kind of help our staff get things figured out. We run those sessions. I usually like to involve teachers who are using social media really well because teacher to teacher sometimes makes a bigger impact than a PR director sitting in the central office telling you one more thing that you can do. And so I always have some great staff members who chime in. But most important, to the group that have social media channels, I like to send out tips and tactics that I find that I'm even using for our own. So, Andrew, to be honest, I love your newsletter that you send out because frequently in there, there's like, hey, here's some social media post ideas. And so to be able to take some of those resources and just shoot a quick email out that's like, hey, you might be struggling for ideas, or maybe you haven't posted anything lately. Um, Here are some great, easy things that you can just kind of take and run with. And then last year was our first year, so I'm only 2 years in. I sort of have a social media theme for the entire staff. And we started this with COVID in particular because we knew how important it was going to be to share all the things that were still taking place in our schools because we know that it's a challenging time. But we know that kids and teachers are still doing amazing things, whether it was virtually or in person or hybrid. And so, what we have really launched these past 2 years is here's sort of a challenge. This is the kind of thing that we're looking for. And so this year, my focus was individual little classroom lessons. So I said, if you're doing a lesson in your classroom, all I need you to do is send me a picture and tell me 1 or 2 quick little bullet points about what the lesson was. And we want to showcase just the cool lessons that you're doing rather than the big projects or the really cool theme days. Maybe you just did something really neat with math that helped the kids get it. And so that's really been fun to kind of just have something small that everybody feels like they can kind of play into. And then we make sure to really share those at the district level. But we're finding now in year 2 that that's really helped our classroom managers come up with content ideas for the year.
Well, and it's so beneficial for those types of items to get highlighted because your community does care, and it helps tell a story. And so you're planning next year you would have like a different theme.
Yes, so next year I have a different theme. I don't know quite what that's going to be yet. But again, it's still going to focus on telling the stories that are taking place in our classroom every day.
Right. And the lesson or the theme that you had for this year is going to help carry over, right? Because they're going to be used to that. And so hopefully, whatever comes next, it'll just add on. And it'll be powerful. So you do rely on getting your staff to provide you with stories. How do you do that? Are you following pages? Are they submitting content directly to you? How does that work?
So, in an ideal world, they would be submitting content to me. Life is not ideal. And even though I do send out reminders, not every month, maybe every few months, maybe like once a quarter, and then I immediately get some. I have found one of the easiest things that I can do is to, yes, follow their pages. But I set aside in my calendar 1 hour a week. I have found for me, Monday mornings work really well, and all I do for that hour is surf our social media channels, be it, Twitter or Facebook. And I'm looking at classrooms, activities, and I can see that they're posting amazing things. They just don't always remember to take that and share it with me. And so, what it allows me to do in that hour is come up with some content and ideas for the week.
So do you pull some of those pictures and stories to then like repost on the district channel, or how do you do that?
So, no, that's a great question. So sometimes, absolutely, I just pull it and I repost it. Other times, whatever they posted kind of piques my interest, and I'll reach out. So, for example, just yesterday, I pulled some content from our wrestling program. And I'm like, it sounds like you guys had a really great weekend and have been really successful in both the boys and the girls wrestling. I said, we've never really done a story about our wrestling team. I'm like, so can I make time to sit down with you? And so we have an appointment on Thursday of this week where I'm going to sit down with the wrestling coach and I'm going to create a little something out of that. But on the flip side, our speech and debate kids, again, had a great weekend at the high school, had some real success. That was simply pulling the picture and the information and being able to share kudos out to those kiddos.
And are you reposting that as a new post, or do you hit the share button?
So I like to hit the share button whenever possible because I think that that brings more attention to the account itself, either from the teacher, coach, or sponsor. I don't know if you have found this, but sometimes that's just not possible. So for our Instagram, most of the time, because most of our schools don't really have Instagram yet, we're just kind of starting to get on that bandwagon. So for our Instagram, I do. I just download it and I repost it as an original post from the district. But share whatever possible is my first
Okay.
preference.
So I really, really love this whole setting one out because sometimes it can feel overwhelming. I mean, social media is overwhelming, okay, you guys. And you have so many accounts going on, and all week long there's stories being told, but you have an hour set aside in your calendar. For you, it's Monday morning. Somebody else, it might be Friday afternoon, and you just got that hour where it's like, okay, I know that I'm gonna look at those channels at that time, and then you can either discover stories that you're going to dig into deeper. You can find things that you're going to share on your page. You could schedule those out. If you love to share the posts, you can copy the URL out of the post, and then you can still schedule it. Because when you hit the share button, you can't schedule. It's just you got to share right then. So what we found is if you copy the URL of the post, you can actually paste that into a new one. And maybe do you do that, Stephanie?
I do that sometimes. Sometimes I also copy the URL and I make it a to do list on my task for a particular day that week. I do like to schedule in advance, but some weeks I just know that things might be a little hairy or iffy. And so if I just put that in a calendar invite, I can easily reference it to go right back to it.
Okay, awesome. So that's another great tip. Just utilize your calendar for a reminder. Put that URL so you don't have to search for it again. But that's great. And then again, yourself. You're gonna be looking at those channels once a week. Um, The first time I met you, Stephanie, was at an NSPRA conference, and I think you did several presentations. You've been a speaker at you're very active in your MOSPRA, the Missouri chapter, and then the national chapter as well. But you and Lana were actually talking a lot about tools to help you. So, what tools like apps or software services have you help you do your role more efficiently as a one person shop?
So I know everybody probably knows this program, but I live and die by Canva. I like that everything is already sized and ready to go. It does just make it so much easier. So that is definitely a go-to, both on my phone and on my desktop. For Facebook, I really like their business suite app on my phone. I know some people have had some issues with it. Of course, it's quirky and it changes all the time. But it really is quick and easy to get in, to see notifications, to kind of see what's going on and to respond. I used to really like Hootsuite for Twitter. But to be honest, I'm finding anymore that I can do things natively in Twitter without really needing that. So I'm kind of phasing out Hootsuite
Yeah.
uh, a little bit. But for me, those have been my main tools. Um, I don't know why. It's probably a personal preference. I kind of like being in the native program, itself. And there are so many different things that you can do in the programs. Facebook recently changed their algorithms not that long ago. And so if I have kind of a boring post, as long as I put the color background or something with it, even that shows up a little bit more. And so sometimes just those simple tricks. It seems more and more that third party apps are harder to navigate with these sites anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we manage social media for almost 100 school districts, and we manage directly in Facebook Suite on our phone. We love using that app. All right, so now let's transition to the MOSPRA group, your Missouri School Public Relations Association. Kind of tell me what that has meant, the involvement in that group has meant for you and your role.
So MOSPRA has really been a family from the beginning. When I was brand new, again, I had no idea what I was doing. Those were folks that I could lean on that were either in the same position as me, and so we could learn together, or I could learn from folks who have been doing this a while. And so that was especially key when social media came in. Because many of us didn't really know what it was and we weren't sure how it was going to work. And so from the beginning, I feel like our MOSPR colleagues have just really helped me to become better at my job. They teach me new tricks and tips all the time that I can put into use. And then when something isn't working right and I can't figure it out or I'm not sure what to do, that is a group that I can always go to and say, hey, I just need some help. What can I do? Has anybody had this problem? Does anybody have an idea? And I've gotten some of my best ideas from my MOSPR colleagues. And so I love that they're always willing to share.
Well, the first thing you said when you said MOSPRA is you said it's like your family. And I think that's so key because many people, many school communicators out there like you're a one person shop. You don't have other people that really understand what you exactly do, what you're responsible for, all the new things that come up. But all of these other school communicators are dealing with very similar things. Did you get involved in MOSPRA right when you started your position or
I did. So I was very fortunate when I took over this position that I was immediately introduced to a woman by the name of Pooh Coker, who did school communications for the district that was just to our west. And so the first day that she sat down and took me to lunch, she said, okay, you have to join NSPRA and you have to join this group called MOSPRA. And she took me to my first meeting like 2 weeks later and never looked back.
yeah. Yeah, so NSPRA again is the national chapter. We sure hope you'll check that out. That has been so helpful to me because remember, when I started this in 2014, this business, I knew nothing about school communications. And my best secret is you make friends with really smart people like Stephanie, like all of the folks out there, and like a lot of people that I've gotten the chance to interview on this podcast. But if you don't have a state chapter, which they are listed on NSPRA's website, nspra.org, there's a spot where the chapters are listed. If you don't have a state chapter, you should definitely join both if you have it. But we have the national chapter. The national seminar is coming up in July, which is in Chicago. So in my neck of the woods, that's like, driving distance. It's pretty close. Very excited to be leading a pre-seminar session this year, and so you can check out me and our team here. We're going to be talking all about some social media features to give you content kind of all year long, and we're actually going to leave you with posts that are all set up, which is going to be exciting. Um, as we
Now
get
I'm bummed I'm going to miss that.
oh, are you not going this year?
I am, but I'm also running a pre-session, so I can't be in two places at once.
Yes. And what's your pre session on?
So two of my other MOSPRA colleagues and I, we do communication planning for the one person PR shop. So we essentially, like you said, Andrew, because we're one person offices, we don't have people to bounce ideas off of to help troubleshoot as we get ready to communication plan for the next year. And so that's what our session is, so that you walk away with your communication plan ready to go, hopefully problem solved.
That's awesome. And who are you presenting with, Stephanie?
I present with Jill Filer and Erica Chandler.
Okay, awesome. And yeah, I've had Erica do some training webinars in my membership group before too, as have you. So that's great. Okay, you talked about a little bit about the classroom lessons that you've been sharing, but what are some of the best social media stories that you've been able to share that have come from your school?
So when I thought about some of the best, um, it was really kind of hard to pick. I have loved sharing our sort of first day kindergarten stories. I love asking them what they like best about school or what they're most excited about, because they're kindergartners and they are uninhibited and they will tell you anything and they have the best responses and the cutest smiles. Um, and kind of along those same lines, just sharing first day photos every school year. There's not a lot of story to it other than to see the excitement on kids and teachers' faces. We are probably the only industry that just gets to experience this excitement once a year for what we do and for coming back. And I love that. Most recently, we opened a student run business that's open to the public, and sharing the progress of how that came to be, of all the training and everything that's gone into this with the kids leading up to that actual opening day, has been fun. And to really train students on how you use social media for a business has really been one of the highlights of things that I've gotten to do. On the flip side, we know that social media sometimes does bring out the negative. Um, and there are times that over the years we've had situations occur, and um, being able to use social media to sort of counter some of those negatives, to really tell our side of the story, not what you see in the news media or maybe not what you're hearing from your neighbors, um, has been a challenge, but I think has been a good challenge. And to see when you read through the comments for all those negative comments, there's always those parents or those students that are positively commenting and sticking up for you. And I think you need that sometimes in those negative situations.
Yeah, I love it. All great stories there. And it's just powerful to be able to get those things out there. I'm interested now that student run business, what kind of business are they running?
So we opened a coffee shop. We are open 6 days a week. The kids make the menu. They work with our culinary arts kids to provide the food. They do everything with just some adult supervision, and it's a senior level program that so far, we're only a few months in. We opened November 1st. Has been really successful. The community has been so supportive. And to watch these kids come up with drink ideas that they've seen other places, or to just want to kind of play around with different coffees and syrups, and to figure out on their own what food's selling, what's not selling. What kind of food can you offer? Because it takes a long time to make some of those fancy coffee drinks. And so, what food can you offer that kind of complements that, but doesn't take tons of time to make as well? So it's been a great program and really real world learning for our kids.
Awesome. And I bet if people want to learn more, they can reach out.
Oh,
And,
absolutely.
and you can maybe connect them with the teacher, kind of the person coordinating that. As we wrap up, you've given a lot of great tips already, but what's your best social media tip that you'd like to share kind of with the listeners?
Um, I think what I really thought about this is to not be afraid to reach out for help. When I am just at a roadblock and I don't know what to post, to steal from other people and borrow their ideas, um, to know when something's not working right, or I just kind of can't figure it out. Sometimes I don't have a lot of time, but just reaching out for help, and then really just putting something out there. I don't want to say that there's no bad social media posts, because I'm sure there is. But if you can post something that has a kid in it about something taking place in your school, it doesn't have to be the most fantastic story in the whole world. It doesn't have to be super in depth and detailed. People like the ordinary every day. My favorite post I saw today was one little kid, looked like maybe kindergarten, first grade, tying another kid's shoes. You know
Yes.
what? It doesn't need a whole lot of social media posts. This is kindness. This is teamwork. And put it out there. It's showcasing what great kids you have.
Yeah, in one little picture, without saying anything, it shows what kind of school you have, right? And all those lessons that kids can teach us. So I love that. Don't be afraid to help, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it out there. So Stephanie, if people want to stay connected to you, what's the best way?
You can feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Smith Steph. Um, Feel free to call or email. I'm always happy to help if I can.
Awesome. So I'll make sure in the show notes we've got your Twitter account, Smith Stuff, linked. I'll also link your email just in case they want to be in touch. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. Really enjoyed learning more about your story, your journey. And just thank you for your continued leadership, your willingness to help out others. It's certainly been a help to me, and now a help to all the listeners today. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I love doing these kinds of things, and I have learned just as much from you and my other colleagues as I hope I've been able to give back.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Come back next week. Next Monday, we'll have another great episode of Mastering Social Media for Schools. In the meantime, keep telling those stories. Bye bye.